Jai Hind friends, today on 4th July, we are here to know about the importance of this day in the war of independence of our dear motherland. And today we are honored to have Sri Abhijit Roy and Sri Sanjay Chaudhary to continue with our Netaji Memorial Series. As we said at the starting of the Netaji Memorial Series, that through this series, we will try to know the personalities associated with Netaji and to know about the historical events that helped Netaji to develop his personality for the for being a leader of the last war of independence, and obviously the important dates and events of Netaji's own life. And through this memorial series, we already came to know about Major General Shahnawaz Khan, Colonel G.S. Dhillon, and then we talked about the importance of Moirang Day in April. We tried to discuss the personality of Sri Rashbehari Bose in the session of May. And in June, we discussed about the first martyrs of the armed revolution of Indian independence, the Chapekar brothers. Now, today we will discuss about the event of 4th July 1943 when Sri Rajbihari Bose handed over the charge of Indian Independence League and Azad Hind Fauj to Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose in the Cathay Cinema Hall of Singapore. As I'm just saying it in one line, this entire event took the preparation of the revolutionaries in the Southeast Asia for years to struggle and to develop an organization like IIL, Indian Independence League. So, at the beginning of this session, Sri Sanjay Chaudhary, the grandson of Sri Ananda Mohan Sahai, who was one of the pioneer revolutionary of Southeast Asia and who was actively involved in revolutionary activities from very tender age of his life when he was in India also. Today, Sanjay uncle will narrate us the background history of 4th July, and then we will come to Sri Abhijit Roy to know how Netaji finally arrived in Southeast Asia and the importance of 4th July in Indian history. So, at the very beginning, I would like to request Sanjay uncle to start with the background history of 4th July.
Thank you very much, Ansuya. Uh, I'm going to speak in English, but later on I may switch to Bengali or Hindi. I keep mixing up. So, but according to the person that we are going to honor here, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, he preferred Hindustani, and that was the language 99% he used that language with everyone. And it was, he felt that he must be the example of the unity of all Indians together. So it was fantastic. Of course, he did, in fact, with my mother, he spoke only twice in Bengali during the war, which was a very which was at a very critical juncture when he was leaving her for the last time. So coming back to, so yes, today is indeed a very important day, because today was the day when, after a very perilous journey from Germany, with taken in 2 stages on the submarine, Netaji reached Singapore and Tokyo. Uh, then he came to Tokyo actually first, and then came to Singapore again. But that was kept a secret initially. But before getting into that, I would like to just describe uh, something that Rashbehari Bose, the grand old man of revolutions, uh, and the initiator, almost the major initiator of revolutionary independence activities in Japan, said on the occasion. I'll just take two lines from what he said. So he said, from now on, Subhash Chandra battle and victory. So that was the introduction of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose to the Indian National Army, the Azad Hind government people, and the Indians of Southeast Asia and South Asia and Far East, because that was on radio and it was a famous speech indeed. So with that, let us come to the how they arrived at this very critical uh, event that flagged off a new chapter in the revolutionary activities and the independence struggle in Asia by a committed group which was there brought from various sections. There were POWs from the British Army. There were Indians who were settled in Asia. There were young people who had never seen India. There were people who had come from India to Japan. They were from all over, from Malaya, from Indonesia, Vietnam, all these countries. But they surged with enthusiasm that here was an army that we will free our motherland. And like I said, many had not seen India. So coming to our main job just now, I would like to do a bit of a small introduction that this struggle that Netaji took and this decision he took, that it was not through requesting the British to leave India that we would get our independence. This was very clear right from the beginning. And I think it over a period of time, he believed more. Although he came back and he joined the Indian National Congress as a protege of Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das, who was himself uh, believed in direct action to get independence in the Congress, and he was so he along with Motilal Nehru that was there. So Netaji had grown up in that atmosphere and had imbibed the spirit. But I must also say that this spirit of using, I won't call it violent, but active resistance and active opposition and using force to ensure that India was free has always been there. While it started with the first War of Independence in 1857, but even in the 1880s and 1890s, this was there. The British had realized that by this time that it was not really, they could not take Indians for granted. Okay, so one of the things that they did was they started supporting the Indian National Congress and promoted it as a safety valve. But even then, there was There were people like Aurobindo Ghosh and Rashbehari Bose who who were organizing themselves to give to fight the British. There were various cells that were created, and there were various activities that were taken up. Bombs were thrown and all that so that, but it was not. These were not individual incidents. These were incidents which had a lot of preparation. There were cells which were being formed all over, especially in Bengal. The Anusilan Samiti was a Samiti which was there with a lot of cells. So the cell concept was a very old, is very old, and so that happened. And so, but coming to what happened then after the non-cooperation, of course, Rashbehari Bose went off to Japan around 1920 or so, after the, after his bomb throwing, and there was another incident, and he had to escape to Japan. And there he was able to, uh, there was a, all the while Japan was seen as a place where Indian revolutionaries could go. Japan had become a place, a country which had defeated Russia in the Japanese-Russian War in 1905, the only Asian country to defeat a Western power. That was very, that gave a lot of hope to many Asian countries which had been colonized by the Western powers, that if Japan can do it, we also can do it. So, and so they went there, they went to Japan, they escaped to Japan. There was already before him, few people had come there, like your Raja Mahendra Pratap. He had also come there, but they were not, they couldn't really mix with the Japanese in such a manner that it became a symbiotic relationship. You must also remember at that time, Japan and the Western powers had a treaty, so a person could be extradited. So for that, Rashbehari Bose became a naturalized citizen there. A few years later, in 1923, Anand Mohan Sahai, also who was part of the Congress, but he managed to go out hoping to join the Gadarites in the US. Of course, he was prevented from doing that. He met, right in the beginning of this thing, he met Rashbehari Bose, and Rashbehari Bose told him that, look, you, I think, should operate separately, because Rashbehari Bose was always under the eyes of the Western powers, of the secret services, that you will be prevented. So you please, you operate from Kobe. So that is what, and he started working with the Gujarati and Parsi business community in Kobe. And as a representative of the Congress, whereas Rashbehari Bose was definitely not Congress, because he didn't like them too much, and he had his own. So then that is when the India Independence League was formed. Sahai formed a different league. He formed the Japan Association, which had connections with the Indian National Congress, whereas Rashbehari Bose formed the India Independence League. And many people thought that they were separate, but they were actually not separate. They had a deep understanding and a deep respect and regard for each other. And and that itself was it was a big source of uh, support for each other. They after the India Independence League was formed, there was a concerted activity which was taken up, but real activity started only towards the when after the war, because when the war was declared by Japan, there was this huge hope that now is the time to become active. This is the time that India and Indians can choose, with the help of Japan, to get into India and chase out the British. Of course, there was a lot of other things that had to be taken care of in terms of forming the right relationships. Some of you may know that the first INA was formed early in 1942, but for various reasons, because there was a bit of mistrust with the Japanese, Mohan Singh, who was chosen to lead the INA. He had a total of 60,000 soldiers. But when the Japanese started arming them, they said that we'll only be able to arm about 30,000. So there were these things. Also, supplies were disrupted. So it was a bit of there was this mistrust that was there. At that time, although Rashbehari Bose was forming a bridge with the government, but with the Japanese government, but it was not really working out. Also, maybe because uh, uh, Mohan Singh was not, uh, he could not fathom the fact that his soldiers were not getting their due, and that the Japanese may not allow them to take part in the main action, and we will be used as they will be used as, in support staff kind of a thing. So all these things were there. But finally, India Independence League, there were these huge conferences that were held. They were held in Singapore, they were held in Bangkok, and finally in Tokyo. A lot of representatives came, and there were a number of very good. These conferences were very important because Indians from all over Southeast Asia came to these conferences. And a council of action was prepared in 1939. A council of action was formed initially with Raja Mahendra Pratap and Rashbehari Bose as vice president, and Sahai was the secretary, and they decided to go forward with that. Then it was at that time, one second, let me get the dates right at least. By then, of course, Japanese forces had taken over Singapore, and they were rushing into Burma and pushing the British out. And Mohan Singh was also getting a little concerned that the war is going forward and we are still not being able to participate. So these were things that were creating problems. So the Japanese, of course, tried to brought Rashbehari Bose from Tokyo, and the India Independence League was asked to take charge of the Indian National Army. So the Indian Independence League became the kind of either holding company, you can call it, or you can call it the mother organization, which coordinated with the Japanese government, and the India Independent and the Indian National Army was the army of the Indian National League, Indian Independence League. So, which was a good arrangement to have. And of course, Mohan Singh was appointed as the general officer commanding of that. So, so ultimately things seemed to be going well, but but even then there were these little niggling doubts and issues that used to keep coming up. And this organization was happening. Then, of course, the India Independence Leagues in Malaya and Thailand and all these were also activated. So this was happening, but very early in February or March 1942, trouble really came up, and there was and it just very sadly that Mohan Singh had to be was removed, and unfortunately he also gave the order. He was also dissatisfied and gave the order to disband the INA, which was not looked at very kindly. Although Rashbehari Bose and all were very sad that he had done this, but the Japanese took it very strongly, and Mohan Singh and a couple of few others were arrested also. There was a huge morale was very low. People, the soldiers who had gathered, all the INA soldiers, they started burning their badges and giving up. So the only thing that could save this thing was the arrival of was if some strong leader with a very inspirational leadership could be could be invited to come in. This, of course, all the while Rashbehari Bose had said that Netaji has to Subhash Bose is the right person and he has to come. Urgent messages were being sent to him. On the other hand, we are told that Netaji had realized that it is better that he now come to the Japanese, the Asian sector to continue his plan, because the correct kind of response was not forthcoming from the Japanese. There was, of course, a lot of diplomatic ups and downs which happened, where the Japanese ambassador in Berlin and messages coming through him. The German embassy also in Tokyo played a good role. Actually, they were all, the big thing was that they were all very inspired by Netaji. They felt that he is the person who can do something here and that he must be called in. So the message was sent. Of course, Shahnawaz Khan was the person who he claimed that he was the one who invited. Of course, that was all right. And then the plan for Netaji to come by submarine on this 2-stage perilous journey via Madagascar and the transfer to a Japanese, everyone knows that story. And then he landed on the northern tip of Sumatra and then went to Tokyo. But his first trip to Tokyo, it was kept a secret because things were not very certain by then, and he was also wanting to meet General Tojo. But then there were some unfortunate incidents in Southeast Asia, and Tojo and the Japanese army were losing some amount of the confidence they had in the Indian soldiers. This was the Mohan Singh incident and a couple of other things. But very soon, there was this gentleman who was the interlocutor, and he managed to convince Tojo to meet Netaji. And I think that happened on the 10th of June in Tokyo. But once Tojo met him, all the doubts disappeared, and he was full of admiration at the intelligence and the forthrightness and the regard that Netaji exhibited. And from there onwards, he pledged all support. That was the beginning where this relationship then took off. And after that, it was a question. That was when he came to Singapore, and as you said, on the 4th of July, he was handed charge of the Indian National Army. So that was the story up to now. Now I'll ask Avjita to take it up from there. It's a very, very long story, and there's so many things to it that I had to skip. I would have loved to go through every little detail, but I think the exciting part of the story is now. So Abhijita, all yours.
Thank you, Sanjay uncle. Thank you so much for narrating the background of the 4th July incident so nicely to us. And I would just like to uh, say a few words. Number
Please.
one,
Mm,
when Rashbehari Bose, after the incident of General Mohan Singh and all,
mm, mm.
Rashbehari Bose changed
Yeah.
the constitutional structure of Indian Independence League, and
Mm,
he made a single person as the supreme commander of both IIL and INA, Azadin
yes.
Fauj rather.
No.
And at that time, few few people from Southeast Asia who was
Yeah.
there in these revolutionary activities and all, they
Yeah.
were of little doubt whether Rashbihari Bose is leading towards the autocracy.
Mm.
And then Rashbihari Bose told them that I am going to bring a gift for you all.
Correct. Correct.
And the old revolutionary handed over everything to the
Mm.
young hand to continue the war of independence.
Yeah.
And there was a doubt whether these two revolutionaries, they were one of the biggest personalities of Indian armed revolution,
Correct.
how can they will work together? There was another doubt in the mind of few people, but both of them were absolute believer of selfless service to the nation, and they proved themselves that there is nothing bigger than nation for them, Netaji and Rashbihari Bose. There was no ego clash, there was nothing between these two supreme revolutionaries of India. So these are two things actually enlighten the personality of Rashbihari Bose as a leader and as a warrior. What he wanted to remember himself, that I am a warrior, I am a fighter, so one fight more, the last and the best. And
Mm.
for the best fight, he actually choose the best person to be the
Yeah.
leader of Indians, not only for the Southeast Asia, but also for the Indians all over the India dreaming for the independence. So now I will request Obhijit uncle to
Let me
narrate
just
the.
add.
Sure,
Let
sure,
me just
sure,
add
uncle.
one small thing. You know, the at the Bangkok conference itself, uh, Rashbihari Bose had announced that very soon Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose will be joining us in Asia. That sent a absolute wave of confidence and pleasure with all the people. So that with that one sentence, he was able to bring everyone together. But on a personal basis, according to what my grandfather told me, and he's written in his autobiography also, that they because they were close and they were just the close group of people who you see in a newspaper photograph on the day of the declaration of war. You see 5 of them, about 7, 8 of them. That they had discussed this, and they said that the only person who can take this forward is Netaji Subhash Bose. And India Independence League, it was decided at that time itself that Rashbehari Bose would become the president, but only till Netaji arrived. And this was said by Rashbehari Bose himself, even in his private conversation. So there was no question. So while people were thinking, yes, because he is a
Exactly.
very both strong personalities and all that, but the moment he handed over charge, he actually, with great pleasure, handed over charge. So that itself was a sign of how committed they were to Indian independence. So with that, so let's carry on now.
Yes. So now I will request Abhijit uncle to tell us about the background of Netaji's travel towards the Southeast Asia and finally the importance of 4th July in War of Independence.
Thank you, Anushka, and thank you, Sanjay bhai.
Thank
I'm
you, sir.
sorry I go out because my battery, my phone is troubling me. It gets
Oh,
heated up and I get disconnected. So I have to
oh,
cool down like a hyperactive child, cool down my phone, and then it comes back again. So that was the problem. Anyway, I will listen to the entire thing when it is on air on the
yeah, of
after
course.
live. Now, it is a great pleasure on my part, and it's a pride on me also that today, on this historic day of 4th of July, we are discussing about the two great heroes ever been born in the history of Indian independence movement. The fearless two heroes who are not afraid of anything. Let me give one example here to start with. At the change of submarine at Madagascar, when Netaji and Abid Hassan were supposed to be transferred from the German U-boat to the Japanese U-boat, the sea at that time was in high tide, and the waves for 30, 40 feet waves were rising there. The two submarines could not stand in a side by side in a perpendicular way. So they had to stand in a right angle space like this, And Netaji, along with Captain Musenberg of the German U-boat, they came up and saw the situation. Musenberg was explaining why it is like that. So Netaji asked the captain, "What do you suggest?" So Captain Musenberg said, "Look, Mr. Bose, Führer has sent me here not to give my life for you. So he has just told me to drop you here so that you can safely go to the Japanese U-boat. And my job finishes there. But at the present moment, that's not possible." So Netaji said, "Then what do you suggest?" Captain said, "Mr. Bose, I suggest we should go back." In reply, Netaji said, "Captain, I've come all the way from my homeland with only one dream, and that is the liberation of my motherland. And even if I have to embrace my death in this particular journey, I will do so, but I'll not go back, I will go ahead." This was Netaji. Like Rashbehari Bose, he never gave up. After the military revolt in India, he planned, which misfired because of a few betrayers.
Yes.
He never gave up. He went to Japan and he built his Indian Independence League there, just like Netaji, who built Free India Center and the Legion, the army in Germany, and also a secret service. Same thing happened here also. On the 4th of July, when Rashbehari Bose handed over the entire charge of the Indian Independence League and the Indian National Army to to Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Netaji went a step ahead, and on the 21st of October, he formed the provisional government of Azad Hind in exile,
Yep.
just like the India Center, which he had built in Germany. And
Correct.
there, in the government, it had a proper cabinet, and Netaji was elected. Netaji was elected. He never selected himself. Netaji was elected as the Prime Minister of that provisional government of Azad Hind and the Supreme Commander of the Indian National Army, which he later named as Azad Hind Fauj. I will just give a few things which he said. Now, at the first military review at Singapore, as the Supreme Commander of Indian National Army, Netaji said, in the course of a historic address to the soldiers of iron, soldiers of the Indian National Army, Indian Army of Liberation, soldiers of India's Army of Liberation. Today is the proudest day of my life. Today it has pleased Providence to give me the unique privilege and honor of announcing to the whole world that India's Army of Liberation has come into being. This army has now been drawn up in military formation on the battlefield of Singapore, which was once the bulwark of the British Empire. This is not only the army that will emancipate India from the British yoke, it is also the army that will hereafter create the future National Army of Free India. Comrades, my soldiers, let your war cry be to Delhi, chalo Delhi. How many of us will individually survive this battle of freedom? I do not know. But I do know this, that we shall ultimately win, and our task will not end until our surviving heroes hold the victory parade on another graveyard of the British Empire, the Lal Killa, or the Red Fortress of the ancient Delhi. Chalo Delhi. And that song, you know the famous line, Chalo Delhi pukar ke, Qaumi nishan sambhal ke, Lal Kile pe gaad ke, lehraye ja, kadam kadam badhaye ja. The famous INA song, which was composed by none other than Captain Ram Singh Thakur, and it became the marching song of INA. Netaji had a cabinet there where he was himself the Minister of War, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And as a delegate of the provisional government of Azad Hind, Netaji had the privilege to join the Greater East India
Conference. Co-Prosperity Conference. You're frozen, sir.
The last line he uttered in that conference was, let it go down to the history, not only as a creator of a new Asia, not only as a creator of new Asia, but the creators and architects of a new world. He dreamt of a new Asia. He dreamt of a new world, where complete independence or Purna Swaraj will be the main thing, and the people will enjoy it, each and every people. Therefore, though we call him the liberator of India, in Japan still there are a lot of people, and in Southeast Asia there are a lot of people who call Netaji as the hero of Asia. Because they think that because of this aggression of the Azad Hind Fauj, Indian National Army, which had a backing of Rashbehari Bose and the Indian Independence League previously, this particular movement had brought a sensation among the people of the entire Southeast Asia. And also what Netaji formed was a secret service in Penang, Malaya, which was very much active in Southeast Asia, and the people who there who came down to India in submarines, they landed there in the coastal. Well, many of them betrayed. There's nothing, I mean, the secret, it's not a secret, but many of them fought as the intelligence people and the secret service men of the INA. This is history. This history and the two great revolutionary leaders, Rashbehari Bose and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, unfortunately, they are forgotten in the history of Indian independence movement. Now it is our job. It is the job of a common man like me, common people like you, to bring the awareness amongst the people of India, amongst the people of Asia, amongst the people of the world, that the last war of independence was fought by the INA. It was fought by the INA in the northeast region of India when they captured Moirang on the 14th of April, 1944. And the 3.5 months of fierce battle with the Japanese troop and the INA on one side and the total Allied forces on the other side. Allied forces means not only British Army, the British Army, the American Army, the Canadian Army, the French Army, and the Australian Army. 5 armies were there, and they fought bravely against them. And today, in Britain, there is an organization of the ex-army officers. There was a voting there, and they had voted that the most dangerous battle which they had fought was the Battle of Burma. That is the Battle of the Northeast against the INA and the Japanese force, even tougher than the Battle of Normandy and the Battle of Waterloo. So they had given the recognition, although they have not named INA purposely. They have said it is Battle of Burma. But who was there in Battle of Burma? It was the Japanese Army and the Indian National Army. And what about the time when INA was retreating?
Right.
Under the leadership of Gurbakh Singh Dhillon, the Irrawaddy River, 1,500 people only bombed the entire Allied forces for 14 days at the Popa Hills, in the leadership of Captain Prem Kumar Saigal. For more than 21 days, the British Army or the Allied forces were prevented to come down. Now, what was the resultant factor? Because during that war, Netaji himself was in Rangoon. When the war was going on in Moirang, in northeast region in Manipur and Nagaland, Netaji was in Rangoon, along with the entire regiment of Rani Jhansi regiment. Now, when Netaji ordered for the retreat of the INA, he also started retreating on foot, along with the Ranis of the Rani Jhansi regiment. With Japanese forces, the Japanese generals time and again requested Netaji that we have got transport for you, come with us. But Netaji stuck to the one point, until and unless all the Ranis are shifted to the safest place, I am not going with you. I'm walking with them along with the jungles of Burma till they are on the safe time. So this is our leader. This was our liberator of India. That is why he is still a charisma amongst the INA officials or the people who are still alive and their next generations also. No other Indian leader had been so much praised as Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. because of the fact he had the qualities of the leadership. But unfortunately, he's forgotten. So this is in a nutshell, I told you, and particularly about the brigades also in the INA. There were four actually brigades were there. Now, what happened in British Indian Army, they are usually in the divide and rule policy. They used to have the Jat regiment, Punjab regiment, Madras regiment, separate regiments, the name of provinces. But what Netaji did, Netaji broke all these things, all this provincial barrier. His brigades were Nehru Brigade, Gandhi Brigade, Azad Brigade in the name of Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, and Shbhash Brigade. And there was one secret service, there's a guerrilla fight force was there, along with the secret service, that was the Bahadur Brigade. The leader of the Bahadur Brigade, as you know, he hoisted the flag. He hoisted the flag at Moirang because no other INA officers were present there. He was a senior most order. Colonel Shaukat Ali Malik, he was the charge of the Bahadur Brigade. He hoisted the flag there. So that is the story. Second, if we go to the story in probably in Rangoon we see, or in Rangoon we see, when he visited one of the army barracks. Now, there, in British Indian Army, they had separate kitchens. Muslim kitchen, Hindu kitchen, and Punjabi kitchen. Netaji knew that, and each and every soldier at the INA barracks, they used to call them by different wishes. Some used to say Sat Sri Akal, some used to say Adabar Sai, some used to say Jai Sri Ram, some used to say Jai Mataji, and this, so on and so forth. Now Netaji heard that. Netaji went once to inspect the army barracks. This is a incident which I heard from the famous Bollywood actor, character artist, Sri Nazir Hussain, who was also in INA.
Correct.
He was the member of the cultural committee of INA, who used to create, dramas and other things to, inject the spirit of nationalism amongst the INA soldiers. So he said, Netaji went. Straight away he said, भाई बहुत भूख लगा है, खाना क्या बना है आज? भाई लंगर खाने के 3 रसोइया को बुलाओ तो. The 3 cooks were called. तो कहा, खान साहब आपके रसोइया में क्या बना है? बोले साहब हमारे यहाँ तो गोश्त बना है. बोले गोश्त बना है, बहुत अच्छा बात है, हमारे लिए एक कटोरा ले आइए. He rushed, Netaji wants to have the food in the kitchen, in the army kitchen. He rushed. तो भाई पंडित जी आपके यहाँ क्या बना है? हमारे यहाँ भी गोश्त बना है. अरे बहुत अच्छी बात है, अब एक ले आइए, एक कटोरा हमारे लिए. तो पंडित जी जोड़े. Then he said, सरदार जी आपके यहाँ क्या बना है? हमारे यहाँ भी मीट बना है. पंजाबी they call mutton meat. आपके यहाँ मीट बना है, तो ले आइए, हमारे लिए भी कटोरा ले आइए. तो भाई 3 कटोरे आ गए. All the 3 katoras came. भाई एक बड़ा कटोरा लाओ. Netaji said, बड़ा कटोरा भी आ गया. So he mixed all the mutton in a big pitcher vessel. And he said, खान साहब यहाँ से आपका मुसलमान गोश्त निकालिए तो, और पंडित जी आपका हिंदू गोश्त निकालिए यहाँ से, और सरदार जी आपका पंजाबी गोश्त मीट यहाँ से निकालिए. Everybody was stunned. They were standing. भाई what to do? Netaji stood up, he smiled and said, भाई गोश्त तो गोश्त ही है, उसमें क्या हिंदू, क्या मुसलमान, क्या पंजाबी. अगर आप नस काटेंगे या जंगे मैदान में जब आपके शरीर से जब खून निकलेगा, वो खून जब सरहद पे गिरेगा, वो खून तो हिंदुस्तानी खून है ना. कौन कहेगा वो किसका खून है, मुसलमान का खून है, हिंदू का खून है या पंजाबी का?
Abs-
He stood up and gave his order. आज से एक लंगर खाना होगा और सब लोग एक दूसरे को जय हिंद कह के पुकारेंगे. There started one kitchen, one slogan formula made by Netaji. And this was our leader. Can we think it? Don't we realize that this is so important for the present aspect of India also? When we are seeing that on the name of religion we are fighting, on the name of language we are fighting, on the name of caste we are fighting. Still we are fighting. Dalits are fighting, Thakurs are fighting, and everybody is fighting. This is the example we should get from Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's principle. One nation, one army, one kitchen. And right from the highest officer to an ordinary soldier, everybody should have their meals at that same particular kitchen, and the food was the same. There is a hearsay, I don't know how far it is true. Once Netaji was very, ill because of his strenuous works as the Supreme Commander of INA, as the Prime Minister of the Provisional Government of Azad Hind. Now, the doctor, he advised that why don't you have an egg a day? You know what Netaji said? Until and unless I have the money to give every Azadi Sainik, every Rani an egg a day, only then I will have the an egg a day. So this was the true, what shall we call it? Democracy, or whatever it is, within the army, where there was no distinction between the highest ranked officer and an ordinary soldier, as far as food was concerned. That is why he had said, and he has not given any false promise, mind you. The lecture which I said, there he said that we do not know how many of us will survive. We have in front of us hardships, deaths, but I have confidence. Those of us who will survive will see a free India. Well, INA could not see free India, but one thing is there. INA lost the battle, but they won the war. Because after the surrender, it was a Red Fort trial which opened the eyes in front of the common Indian people that what was actually INA. The British military tribunal wanted to give a very rude type of behavior to these people. They said that we will give them a good lesson so that in India nobody dares to raise their head once again in revolt. So they charged these people with IPC 121, waging war against the country, and IPC 302, murder charge. But the famous legal advisor, Sir Bhulabhai Desai, he decided to fight in favor. He wished to be a defense counsel in the favor of the INA officers and the INA soldiers. And he said that it is not a rebellion. It is a war between the two governments. On one hand, it is the British government supported by the Allied forces. And on the other hand, It is the provisional government of Azad Hind, which is recognized by about 12 to 13 countries and helped by the Japanese army. They're fighting. One is fighting for the liberation of their motherland. Another one is fighting to save the occupied territory which had occupied for nearly 200 years. This is the main difference. They are not rebels, and they should be treated as prisoners of war with equal respect given to them, equivalent to the prisoner of war. Now, when this particular deliberation was made by Sir Vallabhbhai Desai, the British military tribunal were forced to set these people free. The three army officers, along Major General Shahnawaz Khan, Major Gurbakh Singh Dhillon, and Captain Prem Kumar Saigal, along with the other officers who were captivated in the Red Fort at that time for the trial, waiting for their own trial. And there was a great upsurge in India amongst the common people when they came to know about the reality of the INA and what were they doing. And the army men of the British Indian Army, they realized. Then this upsurge led to the famous Imperial Royal Mutiny of the British movement, British Indian Navy. And there was a police mutiny in MP, Jabalpur, and in Barakpur, very near to our Calcutta, in the Air Force base. The Indian officers boycotted their lunch in support of these INA officers and in support of those martyred INA soldiers who were martyred in the northeast province of India. Today we hear in the history by some historians, whom I called paralytic historians, that India attained her freedom through the means of non-violence. Now, an army of about 70,000, where 26,000 of the people were martyred in the battlefield. You call this a non-violent movement? It was an armed struggle movement, which was a battle in the battlefield against our enemy, the British Army, supported by the Allied forces. This was the reality, and this reality has to come out openly. We need bold historians who will write this history, the true history of Indian independence movement, where it will be accepted that the last war of liberation was fought by the Indian National Army. And because of that last war, the British were forced to leave India because they saw a revolt within the army, within the British Indian Army. And that was the reason that India got their independence on the 15th of August, 1947. The reality is this. We have to realize the reality. We'll have to realize the fact that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, under the leadership of Rashbehari Bose and other members of the Indian Independence League, he led the army to the last war of independence. Today, where is Rashbehari Bose in their books of history? Where is the name of Indian Independence League in the names of the history? Where is Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose in the names of history? Where are the Jawans? Where are those martyrs of the INA who laid down their life for the liberation of the country? Let us now be aware, my dear friends. Let us now create an ambience which would force people to write the true history of Indian independence movement. That's what I want to say. Anything you want to know, Anusha Adrija, you're most welcome. But I sometimes I get very emotional when I talk about this. Obviously, well, the emotion runs in my blood. You have seen all the members of the Bose family. They become very emotional while talking, and I'm no exceptional there. And this is the thing. But with one thing I would just end, that Netaji's association with the Japanese, it was not only in 1942.
Correct,
Netaji's
correct.
first association with the Japanese government was way back in 1940, when in a house in Swino Street, Calcutta, Netaji met the Deputy Foreign Minister of Japan and the Deputy Consulate of Japan, Mr. Oishi. He met and had a very closed door meeting. Now, what was the outcome of the meeting? We don't know. But that was definitely the incident where we had the link between India and Japan started. Secondly, after that, before that, in the year 1938, while Netaji was touring Europe and he was elected the president of the Indian National Congress, Rashbehari Bose wrote a letter to Subhash Chandra Bose, congratulating him for becoming the president of the Indian National Congress, and wished that he could inject the true what you call spirit of nationalism and socialism within the Congress. Now that letter never reached Netaji because it was intercepted by the British intelligence. Now what I hear now from different sources, that letter has come out from the archives of London after the declassification of their papers. So I would like the researchers. Yes.
Here I would just like to mention that during 1939, when there was the turmoil between the Congress and there was opposition growing up against Netaji, rather Subhash Chandra Bose at that time, Rashbehari Bose at that time also wrote a letter to Sachindranath Sanyal. That was also intercepted by British, and there he clearly mentioned that the Congress people are doing the wrong thing, and by any means stand up with Subhash Bose, support Subhash Babu by any means, because he is the person who can lead us towards the freedom. So
yes,
that letter was also intercepted.
Yeah. So what I was saying, that these two letters should come out and the researcher should know. But one thing for sure we know, there was one man who was in India and who protested when in August 1939, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was kicked out of Congress. And he was none other than Rabindranath Tagore, who had called Netaji the Deshanayak. He had said in Bengali, Subhash Chandra Bangali Kobi ami, সমগ্র বাংলার হয়ে তোমাকে আমি দেশনায়কের পদে বরণ করলাম। I choose you as the Desh Nayak of the country on behalf of all the people of Bengal. This actually was the elevation of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose from a regional leader to a national leader. And that was backed up by Rabindranath Tagore. So these particular things we know. Rabindranath Tagore wrote a protest letter to Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhiji, he wrote, whatever you have done is not right. Obviously, there was no reply from Gandhiji. Gandhiji had no words to reply. Later on, when everything was over, when Gandhiji was cold-shouldered and kept in a cold storage by the other members of the other leaders of the Congress, I have heard from somebody, I don't know how far it is true. Gandhiji said, "Aaj mera beta nahi hai." Who is this beta he was missing? Who is this beta whom he was missing? No other than Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. He realized it, but that was too late. That was too late. So these history should come out. These factual things of the history, Indian independence movement should come out in front of everybody. And today, people should know clearly what is truth and what is being hidden from them. So this is a thing which I wanted to say. Particularly, we must be absolutely clear regarding one fact. The last war of independence was fought by the Indian National Army under the leadership of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, the Prime Minister of the Provisional Government of Azad Hind. This Provisional Government of Azad Hind was the first army probably in the world to set up a women's wing, not only for nursing or anything of that sort, not only for hospital duties, but a real women's army who, if necessary, will fight in the front.
My mother was a part of that regiment.
Exactly.
She is
It
still there,
was
thankfully.
led by Colonel Lakshmi Swaminathan, and the second in command was Captain Janki Thivers.
Janki Thevar,
Janki Thevar. And this
Yeah.
Janki Thevar, when she was a young girl of 16 or 17, she first heard Netaji, the lecture which I have, the part of the lecture which I have read before you. She heard Netaji in Singapore. They were living in Singapore. Janki Thivers took out her diamond earrings and donated to the Azad Hind Fund. She came back home. She told her parents that I have decided to join the Indian National Army. If you say yes, I will take your Ashirwad. I will take your blessings. If you say no, I will go out of the house. I'll never come back. It is said that Janki Thivers, Janki Auntie's parents, they blessed her. She went and joined the Indian National Army, and she was the second in command in the Rani Jhansi Regiment. So,
Actually, uncle, when
and now also one more thing. That was the first Indian Army, I believe, where Netaji introduced a secret service. So there are many things which were introduced firstly by Netaji in the Indian National Army and in the Provisional Government of Azad Hind. Rao, General Rao, it was who was in Germany actually. He came down from Germany in a gunboat along with certain people It was Major Ganapule.
Ganapule.
Ganapule. He came down in a very tedious journey in a gunboat. Gunboats are very small boats, along with some of the Secret Service people, officers, under the instruction of Netaji. After the submarine journey, when Netaji had reached via Sumatra, he had reached Tokyo. And in the middle of the Southeast Asia, Middle Asia, Mid-Asia, somewhere he landed. He met Netaji, and Netaji arranged a training center in Penang, Malay, which is now Malaysia. Penang is a very beautiful holiday spot in Malaysia. Uh, and there the training center was set up of the Secret Service. Bahadur Brigade, a guerrilla brigade, which was also involved in the Secret Service, was also a part of the Secret Service, where it was led by Colonel Shaukat Ali Malik, who raised the flag of that tricolor along with charka and at Moirang. Now, another part, the broad-mindedness of Netaji, I'll conclude with this. The banner of the provisional government of INA was the tricolor with a springing tiger in between, in the middle. Then why did this flag, the tricolor with charka, was hoisted on Moirang? This was a decision taken at the meeting, at the cabinet meeting of the provisional government of Azad Hind. And when the Indian National Army enters the Indian territory, the flag which will be hoisted will be this flag. Because in 1942, there was the Quit India movement.
Yes.
And in Quit India movement, this flag, tricolor along with charka, which is the flag of the Congress, some people say, it became very popular amongst the people of India. That is why the cabinet took the decision. The cabinet of the provisional government of Azad Hind took the decision to hoist this flag on the free Indian soil. See, if anybody would like to say that Netaji was a dictator, here are certain examples. In the Greater East Asia Conference, General Tojo, he tried to project Netaji, Subhash Chandra Bose, or Chandra Bose in their name, as they used to call. Chandra Bose as the future leader of the independent India. Netaji rose on his feet, said, "My only aim is the liberation of India. And after the liberation of my motherland, it is the people of my motherland, people of free India, who will decide who is going to lead them." Netaji was a dictator. Some say Netaji was a fascist. Some say he was a dictator. I would say he was neither a fascist nor a dictator. What Netaji was, he was out and out a pragmatist. He took the opportunity of the situation and took the full advantage of the situation to liberate the motherland. And that was
And
our
that
leader.
also selflessly.
Selflessly. And that is what is the liberator of India, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Jai Hind, and my very good wishes to Sanjay Bhai for
Thank
his
you so
active
much. It was a very enlightening
participation.
thing we spent. And like you say, we become emotional. And these are stories that I have heard from my childhood. My lullaby used to be the great INA song. So that is what we have heard from our childhood.
True.
So my grandfather, my mother, in fact, her uncle who was in the Secret Service. So they all have done their bit. And so it's a very emotional thing for me also. But it's so nice that we could do this. And what I think is most important to those who hear this is that number one, they should keep the spirit of the INA and what Netaji preached. Number two, they must tell this story to the younger people.
Absolutely.
They must convey this to the younger people so they do not only do not forget, but they get inspired. So if these things happen, then I think our job is going to be easier. So with that, I'll say bye-bye.
Here, just before entering the concluding session, as Abhijit uncle was narrating the uprise among the Indian people after the trial or during the trial,
Yeah.
let us hear from one of the so-called convicted officer of Indian National Army, just in one or two sentence from Colonel P.K. Sehgal.
Mm.
No sound is coming, Anushka.
Yeah, sound is not there.
Sound
Yeah,
is
sound
not
is
coming. Wait,
No.
wait, wait.
No, no.
no, no sound.
Just a minute.
Start again.
The British had kept everything concerning Netaji, movement, the INA, everything under wraps. People didn't know anything about it. The whole idea was that they wanted to show to the Indian people that a few renegades had joined the Japanese. But once the trial started, the truth came out. And when the truth came out, it had impact not only in the Indian public, but also the British Indian Army. The Indian
So this is what, in just one or two sentence, Colonel P.K. Saigal has given us the effect of the Battle of Indian National Army, and that history was uh, started to be written on this day of 4th July, when in the Cafe Cinema Hall, Rashbehari Bose handed over the charge to Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. And I don't know, it is just came in my mind while I was just listening to Sanjay uncle and Abhijit uncle, that both Rashbihari and Netaji were, religious follower of Swami Vivekanand. And 4th July was the death anniversary of Swamiji. I don't know whether these two revolutionaries had any, I mean, had chosen this day to pay their tribute to their iconic figure of Swami Vivekananda. I
Maybe
don't know, but maybe.
it may be Anushka. You are very much right. It may be. They must have chosen it because they had several meetings in Japan, in Tokyo. They had, and since Netaji arrived in Tokyo, Rashbehari Bose was a constant companion, and along with Rashbehari Bose, he held very important meetings with the Japanese army chief and the Japanese government. Even the first meeting they had with General Tojo, both Netaji and Rashbehari Bose, they were present. So uh, I think it's very valid thing you have put here, that they had chosen 4th July as auspicious day, because one particular thing should be noted here. Netaji was in favor of socialism.
Absolutely.
He always preached socialism, but one thing he said, that the socialism in India will come according to the Indian heritage and Indian
True.
culture. This is one. Now, talking about Swami Vivekananda, I will give two examples of his preachings. One example is that he had said, all Indians are my brother. The untouchables are my brother. The downtrodden Indians are my brothers. Now, in those days, to say such a thing was a very bold statement made by anybody. where in India, the religion had its own hold on the society. Secondly, there is one writing of Vivekananda where he has dreamt about his future India. What has he dreamt? He said, my future India should be the one where a person should have the education of a Brahmin, the wisdom of a Vaishya, the bravery of a Kshatriya, and the working ability of a Shudra. The collective thing of this four will be my future India. Isn't this a socialism?
Absolutely.
Now, how it is different from the dialectics of Karl Marx? One society, one society.
And classless society.
Vivekananda's preached for that. Vivekananda's preached for that. Classless society. And both Rashbehari Bose and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, they were the disciples of Swami Vivekananda. We know it. So whatever you have said, the point which you have raised, Anushka, is a very valid point. And I think there was some understanding between the two great leaders. And that is why 4th July was selected as an auspicious day, where the important handover of the power or the leadership, not power, I would say, handover of the leadership
Absolutely.
took place. The historic handover of the leadership took place in way far away country, Singapore.
And with this note, and also
Thank you.
remembering Swami Vivekanand on his death anniversary today,
You
we
have to,
pay,
you have to,
absolutely, we
you
pay
have
our
to.
tribute to both the iconic revolutionaries of Indian independence movement, Sri Rashbehari Bose and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. We also remember all the soldiers, officers, Ranis of Indian National Army, and all the people of Southeast Asia who fought the last war of independence for us and who made the dream of a free India actually possible for us. So, with this note, we are concluding our seventh session of Netaji Memorial Series today. And obviously, we are hoping for such grand interaction, many more in the coming days. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.